Um, my paper's about Central Australia. I've pretty well absorbed the paradigmatic view of the stern old Alyara men who were my tutors. So anyway, here we go. Stone arrangements of various kinds occur very widely across Australia's arid interior, and they are the predictable outcome of the governing ideology of desert people. It's been made very clear to me that they're chukaba, they're a way, or they're essentially transcribed the dreaming onto the landscape, creating an ecclesiastical rather than utilitarian landscape. The structures themselves vary from standing stones, sometimes up to 1.5 metres high, mounds of stones, stone piles, heaps of stones, often in clusters, like there are about 20 in this group here, or they might be circles or very complex curvilinear or axial alignments, such as here. They're almost always of local stone, because in this system it'd be anathema to move stone out of country. There's a basic vocabulary of elements that are used in their construction, circles, piles, lines, etc., which are combined in various ways. Importantly, they often have signs of being rebuilt or realigned or restored. And in terms of their placement, they have a cryptic placement in the landscape. You generally don't see them until you're on top of them, because they're on the crests of hills or they're hidden amongst the gibber or whatever. But they're certainly not about boundary maintenance or signposting in some sort of obvious way. To understand them, we have to look at the governing ideology of desert people. There's a religious system well known to us as the dreaming. Importantly, it's a fairly unique way of codifying relations between people and land, articulated in a vast web of landish mythology. But the important part of it for today is that it's an inalienable framework of land tenure that articulates with the mythology. Basically, particular parts of a dreaming track in a particular location become proprietary knowledge, proprietary ritual knowledge, and are the key to a land owning group's rights in land. Holding the country really consists of holding the stories and the mythologies and the rituals relating to part of a dreaming track in a particular locality. It's very much a segmented system where the overarching mythology is of lesser importance. It's also a system that looks to visible traces in the landscape as significant marks to validate its core ideology. It really is looking for significant marks of the ancestors. Some of them we would regard as cultural, like rock art or stone arrangements. Others are entirely natural, but even the cultural ones are regarded as Jukaba and therefore not man-made. And but the man-made features represent only a small part of a wider symbolic landscape that's largely vested in natural features. It's also a system that has an ethic of ritual stewardship of significant marks. They have to be looked after, cleaned up, restored, refreshed.
And to not be able to escape.
And it's also a system with a high level of secret, sacred knowledge and proprietary relationships to this key knowledge. So the stone art arrangements are a tangible outcome of this system. Most stone arrangements represent an actual totemic ancestor latent in the rocks, or traces of their activities or paraphernalia at a specific place. Specific place is important. It's almost always the kangaroo dreaming of Ilbora, not just the kangaroo dreaming, or the old woman dreaming of Moranti, not just the old woman dreaming. So this flows through into some of the attributes of the arrangements. Arrangements are quite numerous. Not every landowning group is anchored by an arrangement, depending on what other significant marks there are, but many are. So there are hundreds of these arrangements in Central Australia. They're inherently diverse and idiosyncratic because of the links to specific mythologies. They're place-specific, so there's a great level of inter-site differentiation, which is important for the system. They're stewarded features, so they're built, rebuilt, restored, realigned. And they're cryptic features of the landscape, more concerned with revelation than showcasing. It's been explained to me it's okay for women and outsiders to see the stone arrangements, providing they don't know the stories. As you might expect, the interpretation of stone arrangements is very contingent on local mythology. Similar architectural elements are ascribed widely different meanings. So stelae can be raised heads of agitated snakes or a cavalcade of travelling initiates. Mounds of stones can be heaps of edible seeds or tubers, or they can be women's breasts, or campfires, or bough shelters, or even malformed children. Linear alignments might refer to the long beard of a mythological character, or the tracks of a turtle, or the trail of a python, or the flights of honeybees, and so on. In this kaleidoscope of mythological allusions, there's an intimate connection between details of the associated mythology and small construction features of the arrangements, but their meaning is entirely contingent on the specifics of the local dreaming tradition. Because they're connected with the dreaming, not necessarily the most important places in the landscape, they're also the focus of a range of ancillary rituals, many of which are also carried out at a range of other locations, so they're not the core purpose of these arrangements. They're associated with ceremonial reenactments, such as where an actor mimics an ancestral bird raking up the tubers into a pile. They're crucially concerned with maintenance or renewal ceremonies to ensure the abundance of honey or the multitude of tubers and so on. Are sometimes said to be associated with circumcision, whereby young men are enrolled in this ideology in a way. But this is more problematic because, as you might expect, details are scarce, it's never been observed, and the desert word for dreaming is synonymous with the desert word for circumcision. So informants are often just saying they're powerful places. In terms of their archaeology, there are no archaic structures that we've yet identified, but of the 15 to 20 structures that have been directly dated in some way, they all date to within the last 800 years. And even those that have been dated, the geomorphology of the surfaces they rest on suggests they're only going to date within the last millennium. So archaeologically, this proliferation of stone arrangements within the last 300 years probably marks the emergence of the dreaming in its classic form as it evolves to become a much more to support a much more formal system of land tenure. But exactly why it's become necessary to reinforce the fabric of the dreaming by inscribing the landscape with stone arrangements at particular places, but not others, is unclear. It seems to me that the practice of restoring significant marks leads to stone arrangements building out from a natural feature, and this may be one reason why we have stone arrangements where we do. Another reason might be because of the mythology, men might expect to find a trace of the ancestor at a particular place. As senior men have said to me, big story, there's got to be something here, and they've looked around till they've found something which they regard as the trace, and they've built a stone arrangement, but in their eyes restoring that significant trace. So that might be another way stone arrangements come to be. In his wonderful book, The Necessity for Ruins, American geographer J.B. Jackson pointed out that the significance of space in landscape terms is that it makes a social order visible. And in a similar vein, I argue that stone arrangements make the totemic geography visible, but only as an adjunct to other features, almost as an incidental watermark of the dreaming. Whatever the case, the connection to Jugaba makes them powerful stones. Thank you.